Welcome to my home, RVA. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are visiting with Sam Asher and Roger Loria. And the reason for our visit today is because January 27th, the United Nations has commemorated as International Remembrance Day. And we wanted to come down to the Holocaust Museum. And we are so honored and privileged to actually talk to Roger, who is a survivor. Yes, and Roger, we've talked a little bit. I would love for you to just tell us your story.
My name is Dr. Roger Loria. I'm an emeritus professor from the Medical College of Virginia, and I was born in Antwerp, Belgium, and managed to survive the war through the camps in France primarily. In around 1942, my father went to a place in France was called France Libre, which meant Free France. And this was a phony name. This was under Vichy control, and people did not know. They didn't have the information that we have today. No television, only radio or newspaper, essentially. So he hoped that he could stay there and survive the war and work there. He never did. The Gestapo got him, and he was taken to Auschwitz, where he died at the end of the war. My mother and I, we were Belgian citizen, essentially. My mother was Belgian citizen. I was born in Belgium. So we had a modicum of protection initially, but we knew that it was very iffy. And we went to try to find my father in France. And I was 2 years old, and we started walking toward France. We were caught in a place called near Annecy, the towns of Annecy, and put in a camp for women and babies, essentially. And that was a concentration camp, essentially pre-deportation for the gas chamber. But obviously we did not know that. And as I told, I was about two and a half, and I was playing in the yard, and I saw this car coming up the mountain, and it was for some reason, I looked at it very much, and out of that car came two German soldiers and an officer, and they went up the stairs where the women were in the kitchen, and I stood there watching. I still have the picture in my mind. I can still see it. When they went into the kitchen, two soldiers closed the front door, and my mother, who had the presence, jumped to the second table and the back door and went around the building and grabbed me standing there. And into the woods we went. We managed to escape into the woods. We were the only one who escaped from that place. We tried to walk from there toward the town of Annecy, and we did not know exactly where we were. I was only 2 and a half, and my mother had lost her glasses, so she used to hold me and ask me, "Can you tell me if those are Germans or not?" I was only 2 and a half, and so I had to pay attention. Now, when we made it to Annecy, to the city, we had contacts there for the resistance, and they put us in an attic. And we saw the trucks from the place with all the people moving by to the gas chambers. We had the woman with us in the attic, and she had the baby in those trucks. And we had to make sure she didn't scream, because if she did, we would be taken too. Mm-hmm. So we literally had to hold her tight so she wouldn't scream. Now, here, they're all asking me about my accent. And my wife, who is a Richmond girl, tells them I'm from Alabama. But I speak fluent French. And when I'm in Paris and I speak French, they say, "Oh, you're from Belgium." And I said, "No." So how do you know? They say, "You're too polite." And the point is, when you're not a native, it's extremely hard to hide. They know immediately that you are not a native. And obviously we were caught again, and this time sent to a camp in southern France by train. We were very lucky. The French resistance bombed the train, the railroad, and the train was delayed by some hours. And that was the last deportation from the Rivesaltes camp in southern France, which we missed. And we know that for fact. This is documented by the resistance in Lyon. We checked it out. We know exactly when we arrived there. The Rivesaltes camp was extremely harsh. There were more than 6,000 people there from 17 different nations. Homosexual, political resistance, Franco, antagonist, everything. And the conditions were horrible. Essentially, a method of torture is by feeding people who on the average need 2,400 calories a day. They were feeding us 800 a day. And as a result, you get dysentery and all kind of problems in the gut. And most people were very sick. And we were very lucky that they got scared that the Allies would come to the Mediterranean and land in southern France, because this is near the Mediterranean area. So they wanted to empty this camp. This was under Vichy control. And most of the people were either sent to Auschwitz, some were let go, and my mother and I were let go for some reason which I'm not clear. I think we were sent to a convent in the mountains because of the resistance. From there, my mother had a toothbrush, and in the toothbrush handle, she had diamonds for my father.
Oh.
She was a diamond dealer, and she paid the smuggler to walk us through the nights to Switzerland. I was 3 years old, about 3.5 almost, and there was a party of 5, and there was a baby on the rack of the bicycle of the smuggler, and I had to walk near the baby, and if he screamed, I had to put a sugar cube in his mouth so he wouldn't scream, so they wouldn't pick it up. We made it to the Swiss border, and I can still remember the Swiss soldier holding the barbed wire and let us crawl through Switzerland. We were one of the few groups who they let through. Most of the people were sent back, but we were allowed to come into Switzerland, and we stayed for the end of the war.
It's incredible to me what you went through as a child. You're one of very few survivors, not just from the war, but in this day and age now, we're losing these stories. Yeah. So it's so important that you share this, and I so appreciate you sharing it.
And I'm sharing it, then there is a purpose of the sharing, because we have seen the recent years the hate coming out in droves. The haters of all kinds are coming out and attacking people of any kind. And it is important for us to tell the story. I was 3 years old. I did not know what that was. I needed a bottle and a blanket.
Right.
I mean, this is it.
You were a little boy. You know no
baby.
difference.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
And this is what happens systematically. And we see this type of hate coming back. And we need to combat this very seriously and not be quiet about it.
Absolutely, you're so right. So many of our viewers, their parents and their grandparents served in World War II. My own father served in World War II, and when he passed, his stories went with him. So to have an actual account is so important, and I think for our viewers out there, it's also really important that we have access to places here just right here in Central Virginia to document and keep these stories alive. And we're actually sitting on the second floor today of the Holocaust Museum. And Sam Asher you're going to talk to us a little bit about what we would experience here at the Holocaust Museum.
Well, it is my privilege to serve as the director of the museum. My father also served in the United States Army, and I had the foresight to videotape him and get all of the stories, because he was the last member of our family to go to Poland and visit that family before the large bulk of them went to Treblinka. So we lost 75 members of our family in the Holocaust.
It's just like that.
And I have a lot of stories about that, but it's my privilege to serve here because what the Virginia Holocaust Museum does is to maintain the records. It's to preserve the documents. It's to have the permanent exhibit here of the story of the Holocaust. You talked about the 27th, which is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's the day when the Red Army, the Russian Army, came and liberated the Auschwitz concentration camp.
Yes.
So we hold that memory. We have our permanent exhibit downstairs, which we're glad to have people come through and call and make appointments so that we can give you specialized tours with our docents. But we also have exhibits that come from time to time that aren't permanent. Right now we have an exhibit called Beyond Duty, which is downstairs, and it's about people who saved lives, the righteous among the nations, who saved Jews and non-Jews to get them out of Nazi Germany, to get them out of harm's way. And so that's another kind of exhibit that we have. But we also have the archival collections, which are the stories of the families.
Okay.
We had between 50 and 100 members of the Richmond Jewish community who came here after the war as Holocaust survivors. And we have documented their stories. We have them all now on digital files, and they can be accessed through our archives, which is very, very important. To keep the history, to tell the story, and to educate. And I'll give you one very important statistic. The Schoen Foundation last year did a study, and the study said that of the people that they interviewed, if they knew anything about the Holocaust, they were far more likely not to be involved in racist activities, in KKK activities, in white supremacist programs. The reverse was also true. If they knew nothing about the Holocaust, well, then they might think it's okay to be involved in racist activities. So our job is to educate as many as we possibly can.
He's being modest. The Holocaust Museum sees 45,000 visitors a year.
Okay.
Here in Richmond. 45,000
From
people
every state in the nation.
come here to this museum every year. So that's a number.
That's a big number. And you're doing such an amazing work here. Gentlemen, thank you both so very much for what you do. Roger, thank you for sharing with us. If you're out there and you want to learn more, please come down to the Holocaust Museum on Carey Street. Make yourself at home, and honestly, you will be so glad you did.
Thank you.
Cindy Merritt is nationally recognized as a leader in the U.S. real estate market. Of the more than 35,000 realtors in Virginia, the American Institute of Real Estate Professionals consistently ranks Cindy in the top 10 best realtors in the state.
Make Yourself at Home is sponsored in part by Paul Adams, branch manager and nationally recognized senior loan officer with Prime Lending, a Plains Capital company. With over 400 mortgage options available, Paul Adams and his team work hard to uncover the key to each client's mortgage success.